Hello, this is Jamie Mitchell, and we are back with another episode of the Libertarian Uncensored podcast, going over all the posts in the Libertarian Uncensored subreddit. So first we have, Trump again vows to be a day one dictator in Iowa Town Hall, from independent.co.uk, from Donald Key, and I said, I genuinely don't know how writers cope through Trump's entire 4 years as POTUS. Trump isn't the current president. I see more stuff about him here than Biden, who is currently more authoritarian by virtue of being the current president. And, when they have, it's important to remember that when they have the force and the state on their side, that matters. That's the people who just got bombed in Yemen. Then we have Jefferson and Madison both got congressional approval before attacking pirates in 1805 and 1815. That is the precedent Biden ignores. Madison saw a declaration of war. He didn't get it from the LP Classical Liberal Caucus on Twitter, and I posted that, and I said, it's sadly the direction that the country has taken since then. The president has shown that they really don't have to ask Congress for anything anymore, just like how the endless bureaucracy have shown that they don't need approval from any of the free branches anymore. So it's just like, people justify, they don't need approval from anyone, and that's why increasingly the Constitution is really kind of irrelevant these days, because no one really believes in it anymore. It's just kind of there, and that's why no one really cares about it anymore. They just always have ways around it. It doesn't really matter anymore, because they can just get around it with no backlash whatsoever, and that will probably be true as long as, the voters won't hold them accountable for it. Then we have Gonzalo Lira Sr. says his son has died at 55 in a Ukrainian prison, where he is hiding, being held for the crime of criticizing the Zelensky and Biden governments. Gonzalo Lira was an American citizen, but the Biden administration clearly supported his imprisonment and torture, from Tucker Carlson on Twitter, and I posted that, and I said, just goes to show that whenever the U.S. government tells you it needs to get involved in the conflict to save American citizens, that's just an excuse to get involved anyway. Some people say, oh, he posted propaganda or he exposed Ukrainian military positions. That doesn't mean anything. They still could have freed him like they did for Brittany Griner, but, he freeing him would have gone against the narrative. Brittany Griner was a liberal icon, so they needed to save her, but this guy, he dissented, so he's not going to get saved. Then we have Supreme Court decide whether cities can punish homeless residents for sleeping on public property, from CBSNews.com by Chad Muffin. And, I personally think, if people want to sleep on, I think people should be able to sleep wherever they want. But ultimately, it is up to the force of the state when it comes to public property. It's just like how they can go onto private property, ultimately public property is going to be theirs. But ultimately, if you want to sleep wherever you want, you should be able to. But just be aware that the property owner might take offense to that. In this case, that would be the state, and that's why I definitely think you need to just kind of do what you want, and hopefully no one comes after you for it. But if they do, ultimately you just have to try and defend yourself as much as possible. Then we have Sens Elizabeth Warren and Jeff Merkley propose creating a national database of cops with a record of misconduct, from BusinessInsider.com by Whittling Dan. And I said, I don't like the police, but anytime I hear the words national database, I can't help but shudder. A government database for every single person, all their infractions, doesn't sound libertarian to me. It sounds like the basis of a social credit system, and I think this might be a step towards that. Then we have Hertz is selling its EVs because it's botched the rollout for rideshare drivers, from TechCrunch.com, and it's by Baton 13, and I said, I didn't comment on that one, but ultimately, Hertz should be able to sell whatever it wants to, and if people want to criticize them for it, I think they should be able to as well. Then we have how Ecuador went from being Latin America's model of stability to a nation in crisis, from Baton 13, and that's from TechCrunch. That's from Conversation.com, and Yeah, I like what Red Eggplant 01 said here. Socialism working as designed. And yeah, that's why I just think, if socialism, it seems well intentioned, but eventually you're gonna end up like Venezuela, and that seems to be happening in Ecuador right now. Then we have Wayne LaPierre leaves a financial mess behind at the NRA on top of the legal one that landed him in court from theconversation.com by Paton 13. And I said, I didn't call him this one, but ultimately I think, if the NRA, uh, you know, um, they're just kind of like a control opposition for the GOP. I think the GOA is better, but the NRA, I think, is, ultimately just not gonna stand up for Second Amendment rights. I think there are tons of better organizations for that. Like, I know Maj Tory has Black Guns Matter. I think that's another good organization in addition to GOA, The NRA is not really a libertarian organization. It's more just a GOP shell group who even defended Trump after he said, I come for the guns, what do you say? It was like, I come for the guns of, I don't believe in due process, and that's why I don't think we need to support them. So hopefully, maybe they'll get more libertarian, I don't know, but we'll see what happens. Then we have independent party identification tied for high, Democratic identification at new low from news.gallup.com by Flimsy Out 5563. And I said, doesn't really matter, sadly. The duopoly always wins in the end. They say, we might go for an independent candidate, but, it's never going to happen. Ross Perot came close in 1992. I think it's probably going to be the closest it will be for quite a while now. And then evidently said, I just switched to independent here. In my state, independents get to pick which party you're primary in. No, I can vote Haley the Republican, who I don't want, but of the options would select the least. And I said, Nikki Endless War Neocon Haley, what a horribly unlibertarian choice. You might as well be going for a forward term of GWB/Cheney. I don't think the other candidates would govern much differently, but they are miles ahead of Haley when it comes to rhetoric. I think Ramaswamy or Hutchinson is least worth option. Haley's going back to the GWB/McCain/Romney neocon shit that got us here in the first place. Then we have armed Texas National Guard soldiers are now blocking federal agents from getting to the border, government alleges, from BusinessInsider.com by Zach Ness, and I said, I'm personally not the type that cares for borders that much, but I do love to see nullification of the federal government like this. Tenth Amendment says immigration is reserved to the states, as it's not mentioned in the Constitution. So that's my thought on that issue. Then we have how Charlie Kirk plans to discredit Martin Luther King Jr. and the Civil Rights Act from Wired.com by Paton 13. And I said, I think the Civil Rights Act was well-intentioned, but I do think Goldwater has a point in noting that it went too far. We need to support freedom of association, and if people want to be bigots like Lester Max and not serve people of the opposing race at their restaurants, I think they should have the ability to do so. Then we have COVID shots protect against COVID-related strokes, heart attacks, study finds. Data provides more evidence older people should stay up to date on COVID vaccines from ArsTechnica.com by Paton 13. And yeah, ultimately, I think if people want to get vaccinated, they should be able to, but I don't think they should be forced to get vaccinated, and I think that's the big question right now. I think if you don't think the COVID vaccine is the best thing ever, I think you should be able to say so. But if you want to say it's the worst thing ever, I think you should be able to say so as well. So that's my thought on that issue. Then we have just got a card in the mail today, cross-post from the Libertarian Party USA subreddit by Baton 13. And I just got that card in the mail too. I have it right here. It says Libertarian Party National Committee is corrupt. And it's just kind of caucus infighting. Everything it seems to be, it's either outfighting or infighting seems to be more prominent than outfighting a lot of times these days. And that's why I think, increasingly people just like to just get each other's throats over the smallest thing, Ultimately, you might not like who's running the Libertarian National Committee now, but, so when they do this, when you're running the Libertarian National Committee, don't be surprised, I would say. Then we have, Argentina's inflation surges after new president cuts subsidies from WSJ.com by Dangerous Ad 8554. And I said, I'm calling this one. But, yeah, I definitely do think, this is kind of an Argentina man bad, Fred. And, it also ignores the decades of Peronism that, will also contribute to the bad cultures Argentinians. And I think Milei just that, he did say, I like when Aaron once says here, he says he did say this was worse in short term. I think that's, we gotta have some short term suffering to have long term gain. I think that's a big thing for from the libertarian perspective. Then we have the 2% inflation target is based on conditions that no longer exist from dollarsandcents.org by Caldog Curmudgeon. And yeah, I definitely, as a crossroads from the economics subreddit, and I think, that the thing is inflation, it's ultimately just going to, rise as long as the Federal Reserve continues to print money endlessly. And I think as long as we don't have our currency tied to anything, I think soon we'll just have it all, we'll just only have digital currency, and that's how, they'll be able to have infinite money. Money will be literally worthless, and we'll also have a social credit system tied to that, which I'm not interested in either, because soon, if you do a wrong thing on social media, you'll go straight to jail, I think, and that's not something that I think is libertarian. You gotta support freedom of speech if you're a libertarian, and a social credit system wouldn't be doing that. Then we have West Virginia Republicans want to ban transgender people from public spaces, calling them obscene, from advocate.com by Paton 13. And, yeah, I personally think, this is just another kind of GOP bad for it, but ultimately, I think, if people want people to be able to dress however they want, as long as they're not hurting anyone else, and, if you don't like transgender people, that's fine, but I definitely think, they should be able to do whatever they want as long as they're not hurting anyone else, I personally don't really, I don't really worship transgender people like a lot of people on the left do, but, I think you should just leave them alone. And, as long as they're not, hurting anyone. Then we have, you should soon be fined for defamation for calling someone racist in Florida, from NewRepublic.com, by Better Than Through Chemistry. And, yeah, I definitely think that defamation isn't libertarian. That's why I think this is a good example as to why I would say. We need to support free speech, and defamation goes against free speech, no matter how justified you are for saying it is. I would say. Then we have Stop Doing This. This party first approach, and that's a YouTube video from 10th Amendment Center, and that's the post from Anarcho Federation. They said, I know a lot of folks who could get something out of this video. The party mentality and system is just horrendous if it is ever were any good, but ultimately it is just groupthink and disregarding of all critical thinking for having others do the thinking for you. Submission, to put it concisely. And I think I would agree with that. Ultimately, I think people need to do more thinking for themselves rather than let the party do the thinking for them. Right now, we pretty much have Simon Says, only instead of Simon Says, it's the party says, and you have to comply with everything it says. So that's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have Texas physically barred Border Patrol agents from trying to rescue migrants who drowned, federal officials say. From CBSNews.com by Whittling Dan. And, I don't think that's good. And ultimately, I do think, people should try and save one another. But ultimately, it does come down to who has the force to do what, as you see in this instance. So that's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have Channel 5, Arizona Border Crisis. And that's a post from Dr. 07. And it's a YouTube video from Channel 5 with Andrew Callahan. And I definitely do think, we do need to fix the border. Ultimately, some people want open borders, some people want a militarily closed border, kind of like the DMZ in Korea. I think, ultimately, just whoever wants to enforce the border should be able to enforce the border, and who doesn't want to shouldn't have to. So, ultimately, if you want to justify using force, it's not my job to tell you what you can and can't justify using force on. Then we have extremely well-timed political cartoon from the Houston Chronicle, and that's from Tom 13, a crossword from the Fuck Greg Abbott subreddit. And yeah, I think this is just another complaint about the border or Bitcoin, or I don't know. It's just another Texas man bad Fred. Then we have pro-Palestinian protesters chant "Fuck Joe Biden," damage fence outside White House from nypost.com, and I posted that, and I said, if they were MAGA, they would be insurrectionists. And that just goes to show you that whatever the causes and affiliations of people definitely matter when it comes to what they do and what they don't do. So that's my thoughts on that issue. And I think let's see if there's anything new. Nothing new. I think we're going to wrap up there. I'll see you guys in the next episode. Bye.